66. Good job. The other half sheet, it says it on that one. I wrote it on there. All right. On page 66, we have 4 notes, absolute value, inequality, word problems. Okay. So we are going to talk about tolerance. Okay. Tolerance mathematically, what do you think tolerance means? How much you can take. That's a good way of describing it. Okay. And that's pretty much how you're thinking about what can you do or how much can it take where you don't lose the integrity of the object. Does that make sense? Okay. So for us, tolerance, to calculate tolerance, we're going to call it T for tolerance. Your tolerance equals your max value minus your min value divided by 2. Okay, so that's our tolerance. Calculate tolerance, it's our max value minus our min value divided by 2. All right, good. The next thing we're going to talk about is the intended value. What is the median value or the intended value? What is it at its standstill? Like when it's not being moved or manipulated, what is it at its standstill? It's intended, sometimes also referred to as its initial value. So in the sense, when we're talking about the inequality, it's the middle of our inequality. So what's the middle ground of your inequality? Do you guys remember we talked about that bag of pretzels? And it says an ideal bag will have 100 pretzels in it. That's the intended value. I intend for each bag to have 100. However, I had room, right? I had a tolerance that I would allow for another bag amount in a bag to be acceptable. Your intended value, your I, equals your max value minus your tolerance, or your I equals the min value plus your tolerance. Because there's 2 ways for us to solve this. Now, I'm sorry I didn't leave a blank for this, but you can write it somewhere at the top, hopefully. Our goal is to create an inequality. And that inequality is your unknown minus your intended is less than or equal to your tolerance. So if I know at least 2 parts of this information, I can solve for the unknown. Does that make sense? All right, let's put it to use. So the next examples, we're describing a spring, okay? Do we all know what a spring is? Hopefully I'm not a very good artist. I can't draw straight. Okay, pretend that these are perfectly drawn springs, okay? And so a spring, you either can compress it or you can stretch it, right? But if you over compress it or overstretch it, it will lose its integrity. Does that make sense? So this tells us the length of our spring not doing anything at its standstill is at 36 80/100 millimeters. So this is our intended value, right? That's where we're at. The tolerance of this string is 0.05 of a millimeter. So I can stretch or compress it 0.05 of a millimeter. Does that make sense? So this is my tolerance. So first thing we're going to do is write the absolute inequality. So do I have my I and my T, so can I create my inequality? Yes, my inequality will be X minus my I, which is 36 8/10, is less than or equal to my tolerance, which is 500. 500. That's how you read that. I heard you say 100. Second is we're going to create our joint slash compound. And how do I know it's joint or compound? Because of what? The fact that it's less than, right? So my compound comes out to be negative 500 is less than or equal to x minus 36 8/10, which is less than or equal to positive 500. Are we able to solve that? Yeah, so we solve. So when I solve this, what do I need to do? I'm going to add 36 8/10. And what I do to one side of the inequality, I have to do to all sides of the inequality. If you think about this, this is like adding money together, right? If I have $36.80 and I spend a nickel, what am I left with? 36 and 75, right? We're dead. That's why I said think about spending a nickel, right? If I have $36.80 and you give me a nickel, I now have so my minimum is 36 and 75 millimeters. What? I want you to think. I am recording, so I want you to think this process out.
Oh, you're recording? You're very
Here's example 2 for your spring. This time, your spring has a length of 9 55/100 of a millimeter with a tolerance of 200 of a millimeter. Please find your min and max value of your spring. Okay, so for this one, our intended was 9 55/100 and our tolerance was 200. So when you set up your absolute value inequality, you should have had absolute value of x minus 9 55/100 is less than or equal to 200. When you did your compound, you would have had negative 200 is less than or equal to x minus 9 55/100, which is less than or equal to positive 200. And what did you need to do to solve? You had to add 9 55/100 to both sides. To all sides, not just both sides. So you should have ended up with your minimum value of 9 53 millimeters. My M's got really squished together. Let's roll with it. And your max value of 9 57 millimeters. And that is the amount you can compress and stretch without losing the integrity of the spring. Yes? Easy enough? Awesome. All right, this example is showing you that in order to do this before, you have to have the same units, okay? So you wanna make sure that your units are the same. If you looked at examples 1 and 2, they all were millimeters, right? However, when we look here, our intended is in yards and our tolerance is in inches. So are those the same? No. So before we do anything, we would have to convert them to the same unit. Okay. So if I have 100 yards, how many inches is that? A lot. A lot of inches. Huh? Yes. Is it? Yeah. 1 yard. So we know that 1 yard equals 36 inches, right? Agreed? So therefore 100 yards equals, like Juan said, 3,600 inches. Yes? So once I now have the same units, can I go from there? we're what we just did. So we're gonna make our absolute value. So we have the absolute value of X, but instead of 100, we're putting 3,600, right? Is less than or equal to 4. And now am I good to go? Yes, because my units are the same. As long as my units are the same, then I can proceed. If they're not the same, then that's where we have the problem, okay? So in order to solve this, what do I need to do? I'm gonna add 3,600 to all parts of the inequality. So what's 3,600 minus 4? Anybody? Somebody? 3,596. And we're almost done. And what's 3,600 plus 4? There we go. And this is in inches, correct? And so that's my max and my min. And this is where we're going to stop, and tomorrow we will complete the back. Doable?